right, so you're welcome to the AM Show. And as I've been telling you all morning, we're going to be looking at the drama that took place in Parliament last night, which degenerated into fisticuffs in the chamber. It was all about the E-levy, with the majority bent on pushing it through and the minority vowing to block it and the Speaker not being available. Eventually, the First Deputy Speaker had to take to the chair to preside over proceedings, and he made it clear he would want his vote to count. It was when Joseph Usu was about to hand over to the Second Deputy Speaker that all hell broke loose. This morning, we're going to get to understand what actually may have happened behind the scenes to trigger the clash and what at all this means for the country's democracy. Plus, we'll try and understand the implications should the E-levy be approved and what it also means should it fail, considering it is government's main source of funding in the budget. We have in the studio Edward Bauer, who's MP for Bongo, and we will be also speaking with the Parliamentary Centre to get to understand all of this. So good morning to you.
Good morning.
And I believe we could actually see you somewhere in the thick of affairs. You were right there in the middle, and when the punches were being thrown, I think you threw a couple of punches yourself. So let's just go back to the video and get to watch a bit of the chaos, and then we'll come to you. In fact, you can get to look at it and run commentary.
Me? Why would I have to? How would I
identify yourself?
Don't do this to me this morning.
Okay. But so here's what ensued. A number of the MPs. And the chaos and punches being thrown, and some people dropping, some people falling to the floor, some shirts being torn, and all of that. There was quite a bit of shoving that was taking place. Obviously, in all of this, I'm not sure you're excited about the scenes being played out.
Yeah, I think that here. Good morning to your viewers. I think that tempers had gone up, emotions had taken over some level of reason, and when you have situations like this, because it's really a passionate issue, sometimes you do certain things that later you say, okay, would there have been an alternative to that? But you see, Israel, I say this with a bit of hesitance. Look, there's a reason why you have rules in any game, whether any aspect of life, the moment there are no rules. And I usually use a typical example. When you get to, you see this, your T-junction that you have here, where your traffic lights are. Assuming that the lights go off, sometimes go there and see how things get so disorganized. Everybody is just coming forward and nobody moves. And it is for that reason that we have traffic lights and regulations governing those things, that when it is green, you move, when it is amber, you stop, when it is red, and things like that. So everywhere there are rules. Now, you have a situation where in Parliament, and you know that basically from 17th of November, we've been hustling with these budget issues. Now, as a minority, we had a very clear picture of what really we want. I said, look, first, we shouldn't be seen to be hampering the business of government. And so, before 31st, if we were not able to pass the budget before 31st of December, it means that we may have to give government what we call a vote on account to be able to run for 3 months, like what we do in election years.
Yes.
Or we will have to pass the appropriation for government business to go on. So, as a minority, we took a decision that, look, we're ready to work with government to ensure that appropriation was passed. And that explains why, even in situations where we had scandals, and basis in terms of the expenditure of 2021, and the basis for which we will say we will not pass, for example. I can give you a typical example. A typical example is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where about 65 million Ghana cedis was expended in the name of COVID. Then you have the mother ministry, which is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, indicating that they were not the real people who spent the money.
Okay.
You have Ministry of Health, where 32 or almost 33 million Ghana was spent on conferences and meetings. Then we asked them, go and give us a breakdown of those conferences and other things and how it cost us. Then you go to bring us a bill that has to do with pictures of nose marks and other things. That is not a conference in any case. And you had labeled it in that. These were bases for which you say that, based on your 2021 expenditure and how you dealt with it, we have no reason to allow you to approve the estimates for you in 2022. But because we wanted to see government go on, we just raised those issues and hoping that the Auditor General at the right time will identify these problems and to allow these things to go. And that's why on Friday, you saw that, initially we had indicated that we're not going to vote for appropriation, we're not going to vote for E-levy.
Yes.
So we went on to say that, look, let's approve the appropriation. So as we speak today, the Minister of Finance has money now to make sure that the government runs from January 1st. We did that. You were bent on still dealing with one area that had to do with the electronic transaction levy. So yesterday, we were back in Parliament. Remember that because it's a tax, it has to be accompanied by a bill, because every tax is supported by law. Now they go to they go to the Finance Committee. And the Finance Committee, we gave, anytime you are bringing a bill or any other actions in Parliament under a certificate of urgency, it must meet certain conditions. Yeah. And in our opinion, we felt that those conditions
were not met.
So there was no need to hurry up to take the thing through a certificate of urgency. And so we should let it go through the normal process of lawmaking. At the Finance Committee level, there was a vote. Remember, they have 13, we have 12. But they chair the committee. So normally you have, by per standing orders, the chairman originally does not have a vote. So when they did the first vote, it was 12-12. But at the committee level, the chairman has a casting vote. So the chairman, Koku Kwati, voted in favor of the bill. And that's why it became 13-12.
And then it passed.
Then it passed. Then it came. Remember, it's a committee report. It is still subject to the approval of the plenary. So, for example, they can get up and say they want to do it, and they come to plenary. Plenary says no. Remember, the committee is working in the name of all the members of Parliament and the name of Parliament as an institution. So when they came, Mahama Yarga was the one who raised the issue again of the fact that this particular bill did not meet the conditions under which it should be taken on a certificate of agency were not met. And quoted the relevant orders in the this to do that. We expected that the majority cannot take this line down. You understand? So then, they also made opposing arguments as to why the federal should be taken under certificate of agency. That is a very legitimate thing to do. Now, Mr. Speaker, instead of allowing us to vote on that, as usual, never allowed us to vote and decided to rule on it. But that's okay. Now we're not going to take
You've left out the bit where the Speaker, Alban Bagbin, was absent.
Okay, so I can explain. If I complete it, I'll explain to you why Babin was. And sometimes.
Because that's one of the issues that came up, and that which got Joseph Osu sitting in the chair, and then they worrying, the majority worrying about it.
I will explain to you that, and I'll do that. But I want to just bring at where the challenge came. And then I can talk about that, then we'll look at the whole thing. So then we needed, because it's a bill, we needed to do first what we call the procedural motion. So Mr. Speaker put the procedural motion out there. Then he announced and said that we should vote on that. So he said, after the voting, we said no, they said yes, and they said they have it. As per our laws, you can then call for what we call division. It was at the point of the division that, and I'll tell you the truth, at the time he was supposed to now let them do the hair count, their whip walks to one of the marshals and tells the marshals that he should go and tell him to suspend the sitting. So he suspends it under the instructions of their whip. But that's okay. You still have your man on the seat there. So they did it. They suspended that. So we're expecting them to, come back, reconvene. And then I'll then come to what the issues then were in terms of Joe Wusu and then the voting and other things. But in the morning, you realize that Honorable Alban Bagbin was, Right Honorable Alban Bagbin was the one seated in the chair. Look, I don't know whether I have the permission today to talk about that. But all of us know that this man is very sick. As at yesterday, the minority was even angry about the fact that Bagbin was not there. You know why? Because they were not up to 138. So at the time when Bagbin, they were going to take the procedural motion, If Babi was still there, the bill would have been defeated. Because Adjo Safu came after the suspension. It was after the suspension they started making all calls all over the place.
Why, where was she? I mean, I'm sure the majority knew that they needed the numbers to pass this.
Again, that's what I'm saying. If you talk to all of them, they also indicate that it seems she is not also very well. And I want to believe that she is not, because I can understand why. And that is some of the ethical problems that we have. You have a situation where somebody who is appointed as the Minister of Gender, and I don't know, she's a minister. Yeah. That she is not even available to take move her own motion for her ministry's estimates.
She had been granted leave by the president at some point.
Yeah, so if she's been granted leave at the presidency, so you realize that the only time she appears in parliament, and usually is when there's going to be a vote. And she comes to parliament to do that. And as at yesterday, they could not bring her. As at the time and that's why Honorable Anodombre asked for the suspension. So a suspension that was supposed to be for 20 minutes was almost 2 hours just to be able to get there. But for me, it's all still legitimate within their to do those things. So Honorable Abambamin was indisposed. Indeed, we had walked to our leadership to ask our leadership that where was Mr. Speaker? Because then we knew that this thing would be difficult because they didn't have the numbers. But we all got to know that he was really under the weather and had to go home. You know how he was the leader for Ama Benyado. Am I right? He was the leader from Ama Benyado when Ama Benyado was in the late Ama Benyado was in Parliament. Mr. Speaker could not go to that funeral. Just Gumuahe, he couldn't. Because he was not well. So the man was generally not well. And I know that Afenyomake and all those people who addressed the press conference asking for the whereabouts of Mr. Speaker knew that he was indisposed. But they still went on to make the case they were trying to make. But fast forward, why is it that it is just for this particular one that you are asking where Mr. Speaker is? There have been a number of times. You remember the Sputnik V issue. All of us wanted Mr. Speaker to be there at the time that we wanted to call for the censure. But they brought the second deputy speaker to come and sit on it. And when the second deputy speaker came and sat on it, all he did was defer after we have debated, defer the voting. And up to today, we've not voted. Why are they not referring to that one? So the point I'm just trying to make was that the presence of Mr. Speaker or otherwise, everybody who is in Parliament, all the 275 members who are in Parliament, know why he wasn't there. That's the first aspect. And since he came from Dubai, he's never been able to sit continuously for about, say, 1.5 hours or maybe 1 hour. He has to get up. So now you have a situation like that. Where the problem became a bit chaotic was the fact that when Mr. Speaker then, I'm talking of now the first deputy speaker, then indicated that, look, we talked about the division because we challenged his voice vote. Then in his instructions to the clerks, the table office and other things to prepare the grounds for the, he indicates that he himself has the right to vote.
Yeah, he says, well, he would vacate the chair at some point so that the second deputy speaker will take over so he can be counted.
So it's just like I'm going to play a football match. And then after that, I'll go to the relevant laws. I'm going to play a football match. I have a referee. The referee is a Kotoko supporter. Meanwhile, he's a referee between Kotoko and Haas. Then at one point, there are penalties. Then he says that when it gets to the penalties, I'll change and then one of the people will come and be the referee and I'll go and kick. Who does that? That is why you see, you saw that immediately. And these days, because of the digital world that we live in, anything you say, it is used against you. You remember that when they came to rescind the decision that was taken by Parliament on the rejection of the, the budget, he had categorically indicated that yes, he was counting himself in terms of quorum. However, he knows that he was not going to vote because it is never under any dispute. Nobody disputes that he doesn't have that. And our order 48 indicates that he does not have an original vote. So for him, and I say that personally, and I'm making this point very honestly, and he knows it. Myself and Joe Wise are close because we are both Catholics in this, and we belong to Pax Romana in the in Parliament. Just the past 1.5 to 2 weeks, I think he has conducted himself in a way does seem to be at variance with himself and what I have known him in the past 5 years. He's conducted himself, and I don't know whether that is true, because they say the true test of a man is when you are really in challenges and whether you can stand by your principles. You realize that everything he's done, I am convinced when he goes to sleep, he will not be at peace with himself. Because why on earth would you, knowing very well that you didn't have a vote, the best he could have done was that even to just say, I'm adjourning. So I don't know why you're getting the point I'm making.
He says, I don't have a vote so long as I'm presiding. So if I'm off the seat, then I'm going to get a vote.
Now, listen to me. You called for the vote because it is your vote we are challenging. It is your ruling we are challenging. That is the part he did not understand. You put a voice vote. I don't know whether you're getting the point. You put a voice vote. And in the voice vote, in your own judgment, you say, based on the noise, I think that these people have it. And now I'm getting up to challenge your judgment, your decision. Then you say you want to be part of the people to take a decision as to whether I don't know why you're getting the point I'm making. It is for that reason that he couldn't have been voting. Because it was his judgment that we were challenging. Then you then get up and say you will go, and then somebody else comes in to come and then what they call it, precise, so that you can go and vote. He knew this was improper. He knew this was irregular. But by virtue of the fact that whether hook or crook, they wanted this thing to go through. Look, let me tell you, on any day, if they have 138 and we have 137, and everybody is present, this bill will go through. I don't know where you're getting the point I'm making.
It will go through.
It will go through because it's 138 against, and they need a simple majority to go. It will go through. You must just be seen to be doing the right thing to let it go through. We are never under any illusion as a minority that based on the current numbers, and if everything is right and everybody is present, that we may not really succeed in blocking this. All we are doing is to officially register our protest and the fact that we think that we are mirroring the aspirations and concerns of Ghanaians in the floor of parliament. So I do not know why we got to that level.
Yeah. But I'll come to it because I still want to understand at the point where you see MPs jostling for the speakers and going at each other. I still want to know what triggered that and why the MPs had to behave that way. But we have Dr. Rashid Draman, the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Good morning to you, Dr. Draman. I'm sure you were monitoring the proceedings in Parliament because it was playing out live on Joy News.
Yes, indeed, Israel. Good morning. Where I am, I'm out of the country, but I've been able to follow. Yesterday, I sat through until after midnight, just watching, the unfortunate events unfolding in our parliament. And what kept running through my mind, was the fact that I have been monitoring this parliament since the second parliament, and I have never seen anything like this. And for me, I've said this since the beginning of the year, that if we are not careful, this is how the 8th parliament is going to be. The 8th parliament is going to be characterized by a lot of confusion, a lot of gridlock. And if all of them are not careful, they'll go down in history as a parliament for which we had very, very high expectations. And in the end, all we got was chaos and disappointment. I have seen some parliaments on the continent where they spent an entire legislative mandate trying to interpret, who can cross the floor, who has quorum, and who has the numbers, what is quorum, similar to what we are seeing beginning to creep into our parliament. And, Israel, there's only one pathway out of this. They need to find a way to build very good working relationships. It's otherwise, this is not going to be good. The question I kept asking myself as I was watching, the beginning of the drama when they said we can't find the right honorable speaker. Where is the right honorable speaker? I mean, I knew we were getting to what we got to. If relationships were good between Parliament and the right honorable speaker, I mean now the MPs who are elected, the right honorable speaker, would he have, stayed yesterday, knowing the fact that the stakes are very high and so on, maybe despite some of his personal challenges, I don't know. It's just a question that kept running through my head. And I said to myself, maybe the right honorable speaker would have stayed. Despite all the issues, personal issues that he might have had. And perhaps that could have maybe saved the situation. But certainly, I hear the right honorable, the honorable member in the studio. The second deputy, the first deputy speaker, I think is really looking at the rules in a different way. I have never heard a speaker, presiding and at the same time being counted. When a couple of weeks ago, he counted himself for quorum purposes. Some of us argued that perhaps there was some sense in that, since he represented the people of the choir. I think yesterday's position that he took was quite a bit of a stretch. Israel, it was a bit of a stretch, and
so as far as you're concerned, that shouldn't have been the case.
No, that shouldn't have been the case, honestly, because like the honorable member in your studio said, he was, it was his ruling that was being challenged. And then you get up and say, okay, I can vote, and certainly if you are going to vote on your ruling, we know what was going to happen. Israel, at the end of this all, I think both sides should realize, and particularly the majority side, because they are the ones that we have given the mandate to govern this country right now at this moment for the next couple of years. They must realize that they don't have the numbers, and I think they have to find a way to work with the minority, because look, the right honorable speaker could have been there, for instance, but maybe one or two members could have been taken ill all of a sudden before this vote. We are all human. From their side, if you don't have a good relationship, you don't negotiate, it becomes a very difficult task, especially if for every matter the minority insists that the numbers have to be counted.
Yeah.
So this is the essence, I believe, of the urgent need. It's not still too late. And look, Israel, if we are not careful, this is now beginning to border on national security and all. We saw the military enter our parliament on the morning of 6th January. And we've been at some gridlock for the past couple of weeks. Look, we don't want this disagreement in some countries, in some democracies where institutions work. You can have all these disagreements, or even without a government, but the country can run. But I don't think that that's the case in our setting. If we're not careful, this could begin to spill into other spheres. We could end up in a very ugly situation in our country.
Dr. Draman, how would you suggest or propose that we handle this situation, as in the MPs themselves?
Well, I think that their leaders know what to do. They have to get to the table with a lot of sincerity, Israel, with a lot of sincerity, because look, if we say consensus and negotiation and so on, there has to be a lot of give and take. Right. Over the weekend, I was questioning an NDC MP, saying how would they respond to if citizens said to them that you went into a negotiation, you had 5 issues, you got 4, and then 1 you didn't get, and then you are still insisting. Isn't that going to be characterized as bad faith? Well, he said, the big issue is the E-levy. So for them, it is an issue for which there was no negotiation.
A do or die affair.
Exactly. So the point I'm making is that, look, I think the NDC must also realize that, they don't want, yes, they are putting up a fight, say they are fighting for ordinary Ghanaians because Ghanaians don't like this E-levy and so on. But I think there's also a point. You have to be careful, how much you push. So if for instance, they go back to the table and the majority side says, okay, we are ready to play ball and we are ready to take some percentage off. I think they should listen and
they should soften their stance.
Exactly, they should have some dialogue.
Yeah.
They should have some dialogue.
All right. Now, please hold on for me. This whole issue has become that contentious because government is expecting to get some 6.9 billion cedis from the E-levy. And as far as government is concerned, this is the main source of revenue for the 2022 budget. We have Professor Lord Mensah, a senior lecturer at UG, University of Ghana Business School. He's joining us. And for us to consider the implications and why the stakes are so high. Good morning to you, Professor Lord Mensah. I want to understand, what would it mean should government not be able to push this through? All right, Professor Lord Mensah, if you can hear me and if you can unmute so we can get to hear you. But my question is, yes, we know that the stakes are quite high because government is looking at getting some 6.9 billion cedis from this. Now, it will definitely have implications should government not be able to push this through. Even though the appropriations bill has been passed, if the E-levy is not successful, it looks like definitely it's going to be a problem. But how much of a problem will it be should government not be able to push this through? All right, we still don't have Professor Lord Mensah. We'll try and get to him in a bit. But I've come to you, Mr. Barr. So I just want us to go back to that point where we saw the MPs, the Speaker, bowing, the second Deputy Speaker, the first Deputy Speaker bowing to the second Deputy Speaker, which at that point indicated that the second Deputy Speaker was going to take over. And then there was pandemonium. What triggered all of that?
I think what just triggered it was the fact that he attempted to go and let the other one take over. That's the second Deputy Speaker. That was what triggered it, because we had indicated, we had given signal that, look, if that was going to happen, we're going to stop the elections. We're going to disrupt the elections, because then there will be an outcome that is not reflective of our rules. And so we said that was not going to happen. And that's why I felt that in this circumstance, Mr. Speaker should have read the mood to know that, look, what you were doing, you were moving on a path that was slippery. And therefore, he should have gauged the mood, because he was insistent. And let me make this point. You see, the way you approach somebody when you need the support of the person determines how the person reacts towards you. The majority leader and all his team, they still live in the 7th Parliament mentality of 169, 106. And so, just even look when he's speaking, his gesticulations, he will rubbish you when he's talking. He speaks in a way that seems to suggest that he can't be bothered about what you think. And look, we have had, without mentioning them, we have had people within our caucus, I'm talking of members of parliament, who have pointed to some individuals within the NPP to say that if these people were in leadership, by now, today, we would have finished with this problem. And it is just the approach. It's just the approach. Because, look, they consistently indicate, and I saw that was the question you were going to ask Professor Lord Mensah. It constantly indicate that, look, they need this money. We have constantly also said, look, it's okay, you need 6.9 billion. That is assuming that your tax collection is efficient. You need 6.9 billion. And we're saying that annually you make, in terms of Ghana cedis, almost 20 billion losses in terms of to corruption. Half that. You'll be able to get the money. I'm just giving you a typical example. We tell you that.
But it's not as simple as that.
No, that's the point. That's why I talk about the issue of negotiation. We talk about the fact that, look, as we speak now, you say your threshold for those, in terms of those who will be liable to collection, is 100 cities in terms of cumulative figures. It's okay.
What, 3,000 at the end of the month?
Yes. So you have that. People are saying that, look, try and move. So maybe, assuming that you had increased the threshold, you had reduced the rate, then we could begin to have a conversation. But when you stand on your, and see, luckily enough, it is not only in Ghana that we are not the first to start the implementation of this. Uganda had made it when they tried introducing the 0.5%. After, in 2018, in 2019, finally what they did was that they finally came to an agreement and said, look, instead of rather putting this in on the transaction value, after consultation with all stakeholders, we are going to put it on the commission that you get. But that also put a caveat. That cost cannot be passed on to consumers. So, because if it's put it there, they can also then pass it. Cannot be passed on to them. That was it. 2, you had a country like Malawi. When they introduced the 1%, they had a situation where, at the end of the day, there was so much pressure that, because, one, you saw that in terms of the volumes of transaction, had gone down just within 3 months, 24%. And so they had to find a way of withdrawing this. So I'm just trying to tell you that, based on those experiences, and the fact that just before this E-levy was taken, you have major stakeholders who are writing to Parliament, asking Parliament, the telcos, you have not consulted the telcos, the mobile money operators, you have not consulted.
Well, they eventually consulted the telcos. Yeah,
but I'm just trying to make the point. But even now, today, your news, they spoke about the fact that mobile money, what they call operators, who are actually the people who are into the business, have not been consulted. And that's why on the 23rd of December, they are planning a form of demonstration to register their displeasure to these things. I am saying that, look, and I sit down to ask ourselves, it appears the elders in our country are all, and have all gone to sleep. Look, you have appropriation to start with. What prevents the president, because of the level of heat that we have, what prevents the president from telling the finance minister, hold on to this, let's finish spending Christmas. Maybe after Christmas, people will cool down. And between that period, let's do more of consultations and see how we can do. So that even in the new year, you can call Parliament, you can call us at any time and say, look, on the basis of all these consultations, this is what we have gotten to. For a start, let's start with this.
All right.
You understand my point? So you can do that. But when you are adamant and you are so entrenched on your position, unfortunately, it's not every day you can marshal all your votes into Parliament.
Dr. Draman talks about a compromise and the fact that it will be very important for the two sides to negotiate or come to, the table with cool heads. You're suggesting that the minority is willing to cooperate or negotiate. But we've also heard the minority indicate that as far as they're concerned, they want zero E-levy. They're not talking about a reduction in the rate or the percentage. They're saying that zero E-levy. And that's a tough stance to take.
Look,
because if you take that stance and you're uncompromising, then the majority will also want to do whatever they would want to push this through.
You want an approval. Let the majority show the way by just saying, okay, on the strength of this, we still know that looking at our revenue issues, we still think that we need an E-levy to go. I'm just giving you just a hypothetical case. But I'm ready to shift this way for a start. After all, we have had situations where media, they have been, what do you call it? They have been tax measures. Yes, it's because there's always going to be a media review. Start with something. Propose something. Put something on the table for us. and say, oh, this is what exactly we want done, and let the minority throw it off. You have a situation where you have not moved. You remember that Afonyo Markins came to your studios and said that they were thinking that there was going to be 1.5, if you recall, and you people reported it at one point. You had a situation where my own leader had gone to talk about the fact that he could tolerate a 1% 10. You remember those things? Yes. These were figures that were thrown out there. Why would the finance minister not take advantage of all these figures that were thrown out there to see, look, let me propose this as a start. But when you have a situation where you are so entrenched, look, you don't go into a negotiation with the mindset that you are going to come out of the negotiation having your original position. Then you must not even, you shouldn't even start the whole process of negotiation. And so I felt that the finance minister should have done, look, I heard Dr. Dramani say that they had granted us, what do you call it, some particular reliefs. You remember those reliefs he said that they had granted us? There were one, on the Japan. I say Japan, the Akaten. All we're telling them was that go back to the hands that what Parliament approved. Say that because they were stating something that Parliament had not approved. Are you getting the point? So we're insisting on that. It was a non-negotiable thing because if it's a decision of Parliament, let it reflect so. So that was one out of the estimate. You see that when we're passing the estimates for works and housing, even though the finance minister had indicated that he was going to give 10 million Ghana cedis for the feasibility study engineering, and it was not captured. It wasn't there. It took Mr. Speaker to draw the attention and say, look, go back and get this sorted. Because if you say it is part of your concessions that you are making, let it reflect in the document that we are approving. So you say that from day one, there's always an attempt to find a way of dribbling. Yeah. And so, look, government needs money to run. I agree with you. Government has the opportunity to do a lot of things. We said, look, don't buy this presidential jet. We don't need it. As we speak today, you are asking Ghanaians that they should tighten their belts. It is only proper that you show leadership. So don't do that. You are proposing that there's a possibility that you want to have a chamber. We are saying, as part of our proposals to you, that look, take the chamber off. We can manage with the 275. We can manage the chamber we have. Take it off. We've said that. You are increasing the budgetary allocation to the Office of Government Machinery by about $1 billion. We're saying that in these hard times, cut that. That $1 billion addition that you are putting up there, take it off. That's what we are saying. You are taking off road tolls. We're saying, look, it is not proper that you have an articulated track moving all the way from Temahabo up to Burkina Faso, Ouagadougou, going through this alone with heavy loads without paying tolls.
So bring back the tolls.
Bring back the tolls.
All right. Let's go to Professor Lord Mensah. P.S. we have a good connection to him now. Good morning to you, Professor Lord Mensah. So I was asking earlier that why do you think this is so, this case has become so contentious? Because is it simply because government believes that without the E-levy or the money from the E-levy, it cannot, run the government?
Yeah, Israel. Good morning and good morning to our viewers. We need to understand that government needs money. But government being in need of money does not mean that we can always go out entrenched when it comes to negotiations. I have always said that Parliament has always been muscling their way through to get their bill. I mean, I would not take the current administration, I will date it back in the years using numbers. And so for all this while, their negotiation skills or how to come to the table has been lost. And that is why we find ourselves in this situation. Now, we've been on this for the past, I think, 3 weeks or so. And have you come up with any of the parliamentarians showing the numbers from their constituents through a survey that they have done to indicate that my constituents are not interested or they are interested in this bill? And if they are interested, at what margin are they prepared to pay for? I mean, these days, doing a survey, I think they receive allowances for research and all those. For the past 3 weeks, you could have used this electronic platform to come up with certain numbers so that we jaw on this. So for me, the negotiation skills that our, parliamentarians have over the years has come to question because of the numbers. Parliament has been running on simple majority over the years, and therefore bills goes in there and quickly it runs through. But now that we have almost balanced parliament, it has to do with negotiations. The weight has to be placed on negotiations. Come to the table. I mean, even the timing as to when you come to the table. And I don't think when this budget was being developed, Parliament, as one of the major stakeholders, was engaged as much as expected. If they were to be engaged, I don't think we would have come to this level. And like I said, the executive and Parliament, majority side of Parliament, took things for granted. And if you listen to the statement that comes from, parliamentarians, I mean, clearly, it tells you that we have the numbers. But it's not the case now.
Yeah. Let me get back to Dr. Draman. Dr. Draman, so Professor Lord Mensah brings up a very interesting issue. He believes that because of the nature of our parliament in this, since the 1992 Constitution and this fourth Parliament has lost its negotiation skills, and because they always rely on their numbers, and we've gotten to a point where you really can't say you have the numbers, and that's why we're struggling with this.
Yes, yes, indeed, Israel. I think the professor makes a very good point. I mean, because at the beginning of this this budget, challenge, I have also said, particularly to the majority side, I said, look, is it possible to at least use the time to try to find out, to gauge the mood of the nation, the views of Ghanaians, and that could have really helped. And you see, as he indicated, today they don't have the numbers. No party has the numbers, but I think they are all behaving, and here I'm saying all to mean both NDC and MPP. I think they are all behaving as if we're in the 6th Parliament, the 7th Parliament, and so on and so forth. Times have really changed. Ghanaians didn't trust the MPP enough to give them numbers. They didn't trust the NDC enough to give them the numbers. So I think this message has to dawn on all, both sides. And when the Right Honorable Speaker returned, Israel, and made a statement that, look, the E-levy bill is going to be laid before Parliament and so on, I had thought that was a pathway out of this chaos, because if the bill had gone through the normal process, because they said they were going to consult stakeholders, civil society, and so on, that would have been a very good mechanism for both sides to save face. Because at the end of it, if there was proper consultation, we could have gotten to a situation where, the committee's report will say, look, we consulted stakeholders, we consulted civil society, we consulted Ghanaians, we consulted academics, and so on. And this is the percentage that we think is acceptable. I think that would have given the two sides an opportunity to save face. NDC will say, okay, yes, now I think the citizens have spoken. MPP will say, okay, we can't get the 1.75, but we can get maybe 0.75 or whatever it is. But all of a sudden, we hear, instead of maybe the bill doing the normal kind of journey, and the certificate of urgency issue, that was what created the scene that you are seeing. And we are here at the moment, and we don't know what's going to happen today. I think the chaos is not over yet.
Let me come to you, Mr. Bauer. So,
unfortunately, Israel, I have to leave you because I am in the country. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Draman, for joining us for the conversation. We still have Professor Lord Mensah, and I'll be coming to you in a bit. But Mr. Bauer, I just want to understand, one of the points that's being made is that it could have helped if the MPs themselves would have gone down to their constituencies to get to solicit the views of their constituents. Not so much about we want the bill, we want the e-levy or we don't want the e-levy, but are they willing to compromise? Are they willing to take some percentage of the e-levy, maybe 1%? If the MPs had done something to that effect, they probably could bring something to the table which convince the majority.
Look, I came back from a constituency yesterday, the morning. You know, over the weekend, we had a break. We were not in Parliament. So I went to my constituency. Every single person I met, after exchanging pleasantries, was a simple warning. Make sure you don't allow this e-levy to go through. Indeed, one of the gentlemen that argued to extend that I just got tired and I walked away was the fact that he said, you must make sure you block it. And I drew his attention to the fact that we don't have the numbers. Then you know what he said? How you manage to get a speaker on the 6th of January, do the same thing and make sure you kick this. And I tried explaining to him that the circumstances are based on our orders. Because this was an election of somebody into office, the voting was secret. And Israel, I'm telling the truth. If we were to put this vote into secret balloting, we won't be here. Trust me, this e-levy would have been defeated. I know members of parliament on the MPP side who privately, because I cannot divulge that, who privately think that this thing should not go through. But they have no say. Open your mouth and they will bring a candidate against you in the next election.
It's also possible that there are some minority MPs who may be in support.
Look, but yes, I agree with you. It's possible. Everything is possible. But Israel, you are a media person. Just look at the mood of the country. And as to whether Ghanaians, the majority of Ghanaians, are ready for this. I am not for a moment indicating the government does not need money. Government may have to go, and they've shown that this in data as to why we think that we need money. They've done that. But the issue is that government itself, as part of the introduction of this electronic, transaction levy, should have made some level of consultations, get some buy-in before we even move to this level. Yeah. And I'm saying that, look, let's start with baby steps. First, do the right things first. Let people do, and let's see what are the figures that will be tolerable to everybody. Some people do not look. Even yesterday, and I'm telling you, the reason why I'm making that point, I was just sitting down here looking at the order paper, the various we have addendum 1, addendum 2, and addendum 3. These are all proposals, assuming that the whole thing is not collapsed, and that we are going to. Remember that I said it was a law. If you look at just proposals alone in terms of the amendments people have proposed, there are not less than 35 of them. Each one is subject to voting. Yes, each one is subject to voting. Each amendment is subject to voting. Do you think if you're not careful, February will get us and we are not through with this? Each one, I just look at the other ones. If you look at them, each one is subject to voting. So government must begin.
Because a minority would want it to go to a vote.
Yes, because at the end of the day, everyone will be put on a voice vote. If Mr. Speaker says these people have it, the other people will challenge it. And you have it, and these are not amendments from only the majority and the minority. The majority also has some amendments there. So each one will be subject to voting. Do you think we can go with this thing? Do you think we can go with this? So certainly this has to, there has to be some compromise. There must be some compromise.
And you want the majority to come to the table with some compromise.
They should come. They should tell Ghanaians, what is our movement? Since the day we started this whole idea, what is the movement?
Yeah. Let me go to Professor Lord Mensah. So, Professor Lord Mensah, so what would it mean if this fails, the e-levy?
Yeah, well, it means a lot, Israel. If you look at the budget structure, it will mean a lot to the government. Now, this is a government who has indicated intention to reduce, borrowing. Accepting the levels of our debt and ensuring that this time we don't borrow, but then rather we reduce our borrowing, but rather go to the people, to finance whatever development they are looking for. And so clearly, government appetite to squeeze the people was high in the budget. And it gives a signal clearly in a sense that if you look at the leap of our revenue, which last year we did around 70 billion and over, and the government declaring that this time revenue will hit about 100 billion and over. The gap that was, created, it tells you that government needs money, and therefore those funds must come from the people. But let me chip in this, Israel. You see, government has looked at this e-platform as whether you put the price high or not, the consumer will still patronize it. And I'm telling you clearly that we are not there yet. We're not there in a sense that, fine, when it comes to consumers like me, I may want to, use it whether the price is high or not. But not those people down there that we claim that this this e-transaction has brought them into the tax net. Those people are at a sensitive stage. They are at a sensitive stage in a sense that if you try to price high, they may stop demanding this service. And so we have to be careful what margins we put on the charges that they transact for. And so effectively, I will tell you that it's a very sensitive thing. And if the government want this to go through, I think they should compromise some levels.
All right.
And I believe the minority will buy into it. Because let me tell you, when this bill comes into play and the minority comes to power, they won't remove it because it's a source of revenue.
Yeah.
The economic structure has moved into that e-space, but just that it is sensitive for now to go all out and say, I'm going to, put a levy on it, and whether the levy is so high or not, the people will still consume it. We're not there yet. It has not gotten to the essential level, like water, where you cannot do without it. Now people can do without the e-levy, because before the e-levy, we just moved onto that platform, and in fact, we have done a lot of investment in this particular administration. And so the level that they've placed this e-levy, if we don't take care, the benefit that we're supposed to reap from that e-transaction will not realize it.
Yeah.
And all those, investment that we've done will go into, nothing to write about.
Yeah.
So for me, I think the government should come to the table. And like I said earlier, they've lost their negotiation skills. They should go back and put those caps on and then, negotiate to a level where they will not deter people away from using this e-transaction. And at the same time, government will be able to rake in the necessary revenue that they want to collect from this e-levy. But Israel, let me chip in this. I've gone through the bill, and, the funny thing is that the bill only talks about, the how, to collect this, levy, and the agent that will collect it, and not making sure that no private entity will be hired to do this collection. Israel, you see, when you look at into the budget, clearly, the budget indicated that this levy is going to do several things. One, infrastructure, Obatampeke, roads, and all those. You see, we've removed the road tolls.
Yeah.
Tell me which part of the bill, right, indicate what proportions will go into toll, what proportions will go into, Obatampeke, which proportion will go into USTAT. There's nothing of that sort in the bill. This country is a country where, you see, the budget indicated that we're going to expend about 120 billion and over. Let me tell you, we call something reappropriation and misappropriation in the budget. That 120 will be there. But when money is needed to an area where the policymaker thinks will win him vote.
Which has not been budgeted for.
Yes, we have those tendencies. So for me, I think the bill in itself is not complete for them to fight over. They have to, indicate what proportion will go into roads now that we've removed the roads. Because if we don't take care, these monies will come into that pool, and in the end, monies to even refill some of our potholes will not get them.
All right.
So we have so many things to talk about when it comes to this E-levy thing. But I believe that they should go to the table and then negotiate.
All
because
right.
What is happening now, we shouldn't look at it as only Ghanaians who are stakeholders and that we are going to be affected. The international community, if you look at our portfolio investment, chunk of them are being held by foreigners. They are all marking time to look at how government businesses are going to run.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful how we go about it.
Okay.
And like I said earlier, it's long overdue that our parliamentarians sends signal from the people to parliament rather than going to parliament to negotiate at a personal level.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Professor Lord Mensah. He's a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. And then earlier, we also had Dr. Rashid Rahman, who is the Executive Director at the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. And I'll come to Edward Bauer, who is with me in the studio, the MP for Bongo, to just wrap up. So this morning, we're expecting that the proceedings would resume in Parliament.
Yeah, so yesterday the House was adjourned to today 9 a.m. In the forenoon. So we expect that 9 o'clock we'll go to Parliament. We'll sit in the chamber and continue the business.
We should expect that the Speaker, Bambagbin, will be in the seat, right?
I just hope so. That he will be around to do that. Look, let me state very clearly, just as I told you earlier on. All of us, when we are not well and we go into treatment, it takes us some time to be able to recuperate. It takes a period. It's a gradual process. And he's gradually trying to get back his strength and energy.
Yeah.
But he's still working very hard on that. I think that what Professor Lord Mensah said, what Dr. Dramani said, the MPP must begin to start making us engage. And that cannot be by doing this Rambo-style type of getting the
And I hope that happens. But my other concern, as I watched the visuals and the images and the scaffold and all of that, was that we're in an era of COVID-19. And a number of you had your masks dropped. And with the yelling and the screaming and all of that, I am concerned that we may probably have some MPs, picking up COVID-19 infections.
You're right. January 6th, we had a number of MPs who were infected with the COVID, and some even almost lost their lives. And so it's a very good observation you have made.
You probably should go check.
Yeah, so
you should go do a test. And make sure that
I'll try to see if I can do it, and then I'll send you a private thing. Say, Charlie, I've checked and I'm okay.
Yeah, but I hope that you turn out safe. But thank you very much, Edward Bauer, for making time to join us.